Okay, ready for this? The head of the NAACP wants you to be tested for implicit racial bias, and he wants it to be mandatory for public officials. Derek Johnson explained in a USA Today op-ed, quote, "It's just a matter of time before another black person is abused, arrested, or shot dead for flying, golfing, driving, walking, or drinking coffee while black." So is this the right approach to improving race relations? Let's ask Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins and Fox News contributor, radio talk show host Kevin Jackson. All right, let's go to you, Michael. Implicit racial bias training. Tell me how that would work.
Well, listen, I see it in the implicit bias in the criminal justice system every day as an attorney. I see it in the way that our police systems are done. I see it in the different punishments. And I think it's something we have to address. I think implicit bias is something that, is an issue that has historical connotations, and we can either choose to run away from it or we can choose to address it.
I'm not trying to be cute here, but can you explain for our viewers who aren't familiar with the term what it means?
So implicit bias basically means that it's a subconscious bias. And so when you see someone who's African American, you're afraid of them, not because of, they're actually being a danger, but because they're African American. And, there are other racial ways of doing it, but that's the easiest one to describe. And
so even if you don't demonstrate any active bias in what you do or say, you could feel those things. Is that right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I know that may sound ridiculous on its face, but think about it in resumes for applying to jobs. When you see certain names, those people are less likely to get hired because of the connotations that come with those names.
Let's go to you, Kevin. This is what Whoopi Goldberg said today on The View. She's probably not known to be the most conservative person. Let's watch.
I mean, even though there's 5 black people behind him with a sign that says "Blacks for Trump."
They have a shirt, too, yep.
There's a shirt.
Guys.
There's like 4 or 5 guys standing. I think it's the same purpose. I think it's the same 5 people that go everywhere. But I could be wrong.
The premise is somehow that Trump has done so much for the African-American community. And I just don't see it.
I don't think anybody in their right mind would point to anything.
So, nothing. Hasn't done anything. And it dovetails into this conversation about, look, people are harboring this implicit bias, and NAACP wants to train people to think differently, or at least recognize it. And Trump's kind of part of the problem, I guess the implicit argument is, or explicit argument, and things aren't really getting better.
Well, lucky for you, I took the implicit bias test before I came here tonight, and it turns out I don't like stupid people of any race, so that's my bias. Look, this is a subject that cracks me up. Michael even have the difficult time trying to explain what he means by it.
I have no problem.
I think he explained it.
And the irony of it is that it's a group that has an explicit bias for colored people who's actually bringing this up. And if you listen to what Whoopi Goldberg said, it made absolutely no sense. Look, everybody has implicit biases. We have explicit biases. We have what's called common sense. We profile. I have a bias for the food I eat, the restaurants I go to, the people I hang around. And so now we've got to study it. But, Laura, I'll ask you this. Do you know any conservative people that teach these types of classes? Anybody that's going to teach about bias or white privilege or some other nonsenses by the left are nothing but leftists who are the most divisive people in this country. Americans are sick of them. They teach this in academia because this is an industry. It's a money-making, multi-trillion-dollar industry that I wrote a book about called Race Pimping. This bias is nonsense, and Michael knows it.
Michael,
okay, first of all,
I'll let you respond. I just want to show a chart so people get some sense of where we are with unemployment. Black unemployment rate, I guess Whoopi Goldberg thinks it's all Obama, but this is what it looks like. It's now at 6.6%. It is a record low. That is something to celebrate. I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. And that record low has occurred under Donald Trump's watch. Michael.
Okay, so let me address a couple things. First of all, Kevin, I don't know if you didn't get the memo, but we're not colored people anymore. That's just not how we refer to each other anymore.
Then.
So let me address the unemployment record. So if you look at when President Obama came into office, 17.5 is what the African American unemployment record is. Now it's a little under 7%. And so, I think has President Trump done some things that have contributed to that? Yeah. But President Obama dropped it by 10%. Now, implicit bias. I think it's ridiculous to say that implicit bias isn't a real thing. We'll look at Tamir Rice in Ohio, a child who was killed holding an airsoft gun. But rather,
Dylan.
So if you don't believe it's real, or if you if you believe it's
real. Absolutely believe it's real.
How do you not believe that there's a racial connotation?
I believe you apply it. I believe Whoopi Goldberg applies it. It's applied to Catholics, Christians. It's applied to capitalists. It's applied to conservatives.
Yeah, gentlemen, I think one thing that is difficult for people to get, though, is what do you do about it? So you have training to get yourself to think, okay, think differently. You know what I mean? When you say training, what does that mean? People grow up and they grow up and think all sorts of things.
You grow out of it. You grow out of it.
And then you have friends who are people from different walks of life, and you're like, well, I don't know. I just think the idea of training people, that just seems weird. Like training.
It seems rather childish.
I get that. The training word may be thing, but I think it's conversation. We need to be able to have uncomfortable conversations.
And we're going to have more of a conversation with both of you soon because you're both fantastic guests, and I like both of you. So thank you so much for being on.